All right, so can we really ditch fossil fuels and run the world on 100% renewable energy?
It's the question everyone's asking.
Yeah, seems like it. We've got a ton of articles here, reports, the pros and cons list. People are really interested in this. We've got stuff on the economics and even some really out there technologies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for all the talk about renewables, we're still pretty hooked on fossil fuels, aren't we?
Yeah.
Those reports you sent, I mean, they don't paint a very pretty picture. Still about three-quarters of global energy production.
Wow.
And, holding a lot of the responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions, like a hefty 75%.
Okay, so not the best way to start, but renewables are growing, right?
They are.
Okay, good.
The question is, are they growing fast enough?
Yeah, that's
In 2021, we're looking at about 19% of the global energy
go
mix.
right.
It's progress, but it needs to be way faster if we want to hit those climate goals.
So let's talk about what makes up this renewable energy world. Solar, wind, the usual suspects, hydropower, geothermal, biomass. And then there's all the new stuff that's like tidal and wave energy.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that they all kind of have their own pluses and minuses, strengths and weaknesses. Some seem ready to go. Some are still kind of getting warmed up.
Exactly. Like a superhero team.
Oh, I'd like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Each with their unique power.
Okay.
And some of them are pretty remarkable. Take solar, for instance. The cost of installing solar panels, it's plummeted.
Yeah.
We're talking a tenfold decrease over the past decade.
Really?
That's huge. And it's not just the cost, it's the efficiency, too. You sent over an article about these transparent solar panels. They're thin enough to put on windows.
Wait, so buildings could become energy generators?
Yes, it's pretty wild.
So sci-fi.
Right. It's so cool to see how fast the tech's moving, but we've got to look at the economics. Where's the money going? Who's investing in these renewable energy superheroes?
Yeah, that's true, right? It can't just be cool tech. It's got to be accessible, affordable. So what does that look like? Like the financial side of it?
Well, one of the reports you sent highlighted this gap, between developed and developing countries when it comes to investment. Europe and North America are getting most of the money, while other places, like Africa, are struggling to get the funding they need to make the switch.
So it's not even just about throwing money at the problem. It's about making sure the money's going to the right places.
Totally. It's about creating policies and incentives that make renewable energy attractive, like globally, financially.
Right?
So something's being talked about are grants, concessional loans, which are just loans with lower interest rates and longer repayment terms,
Right.
which makes it easier for developing nations to take on big projects. And even, the idea of a global wealth tax is out there.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. It's ambitious, but I think it shows the scale of what we're talking about here. It's not just we tweak a few things. It's a whole system change.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Systemic challenge needs a systemic solution, but there are people working on it, which is good. And speaking of brilliant minds, let's talk about the fun stuff, the breakthroughs, the technology.
Hit me with the wow factor. What do we have? Flying cars powered by sunshine.
Not quite flying cars, but we're talking about solar cells becoming more efficient than ever, monocrystalline, multi-junction, even perovskite cells, which are pretty exciting.
Okay.
Made from cheap, readily available materials, could make solar energy much more accessible.
So imagine solar panels are so cheap, anyone can put them on their roof no matter how much they make.
Exactly.
That changes things.
Yeah. And it's not just solar. You sent me something about methane pyrolysis.
Right?
This way to produce hydrogen fuel from natural gas, but without releasing any CO2.
Cool.
And then there's the super sci-fi idea, beaming solar energy down from space.
Wait, hold on. Beaming it from space? Is that even a thing?
It's still very early days, research-wise, but imagine 247 solar energy, regardless of clouds, time of day.
Yeah.
That's revolutionary.
It all sounds pretty great, but, renewables aren't perfect. Everything has its downsides.
Of course.
What are we missing? What's the catch?
Yeah, you're right. There's no free lunch. Wind farms, they can be a problem for birds and bats.
Right.
Solar farms can disrupt ecosystems, especially big ones. Hydropower messes with rivers. We got to think about these things as we switch over.
But how does it compare to what we're doing with fossil fuels already?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What level of impact are we willing to accept to get to a cleaner energy future? It's a trade-off, it's complicated, and we got to get it right.
Okay, so we've got the tech, we've got the funding, hopefully. But what about the policies? Because let's be honest, fossil fuels are a powerful industry.
Yeah.
They're not going to just disappear.
No.
So what do we do about that?
Yeah, that's where it gets even more complicated. The political landscape is a messy place. Fossil fuel interests, they're dug in deep. One of those articles talked about how hard it is to get renewable energy projects approved. Like offshore wind, you need 7 permits,
Wow.
2 years on average to get approval.
So long.
Yeah, not exactly speedy progress.
No.
We need a much clearer plan to cut carbon or decarbonize. We need better policies, more incentives for renewable energy, and we all need to work together. This
Yeah.
isn't about competition, it's about collaborating.
Yeah, that's such a good point. This isn't about like one country winning or one company. It's about all of us figuring this out together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating. It's not just about, numbers and tech. It's about people and the kind of world we want to live in
Yeah.
and what we leave for, future generations.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we've said it. Getting to 100% renewables is a huge deal. It's
Yeah.
complex.
For sure.
It's going to take a lot of changes. But can we actually do it?
That's the question we're going to keep digging into. I mean,
Yeah.
we've only just started. Stay tuned because next time we're going to go way back.
Right.
Look at the history of energy transitions. What can we learn from the past?
Interesting.
We'll look at the awesome stuff already happening in renewable energy, people doing really inspiring work. One of the articles you sent talked about the history of energy transitions.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting to think that, not that long ago, wood was the main energy source.
Seriously.
Imagine that.
That's crazy. It's hard to picture our world running on firewood.
I know, right?
But I guess, yeah, before all this tech, we had to use what we had.
Exactly. And then the Industrial Revolution came along, and boom, everything changed.
Yeah.
Coal became king, then oil, natural gas. It shows you how much things can change,
It does.
driven by new ideas and what people need.
Right. And now it looks like we're on the verge of another big shift.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2021, renewables were already a decent chunk, right? Wind, solar, hydropower, all that.
Yeah, about 19% of global energy. But hydropower is still the biggest player there.
Really?
Yeah. But to hit those climate goals, we need to see a lot more renewables. Like, way more.
How much more?
Like, we're talking a 6-fold increase to
Oh,
really avoid the worst of climate change.
6 times. That's huge.
It's a big challenge,
Yeah.
but it's possible.
It's definitely a wake-up call, though.
Right.
We can't just sit around and wait for it to happen.
No, got to be proactive.
There's another thing I was thinking about. One of the reports mentioned this gap
Oh, yeah.
between all the talk about clean energy and what some countries are actually doing.
What do you mean?
Well, we're pushing for more renewable investments. There's all these agreements.
Right.
But then you've got, the U.S. still putting tons of money into fossil fuels.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
It seems like we're sending mixed messages.
It does.
If we're serious about this, why are we still funding the problem?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
You've got powerful lobbies, economic interests, all that.
Right. It's a whole web of stuff.
But we got to talk about it.
Yeah, we do.
If we want a good energy policy,
Yeah.
it needs to make sense.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a sec, talk about something more fun.
Okay.
All the new tech. What about those super efficient solar cells we were talking about?
Oh, yeah, those are exciting.
They are.
Monocrystalline, multi-junction. They're making solar cells way better at converting sunlight into electricity.
Wow.
And then there's perovskite solar cells, which are pretty new.
Right.
They use cheaper materials, so they could be a lot more affordable.
And easier to make.
Exact.
So this could be huge, especially for places that haven't been able to afford solar before.
You got it. Imagine solar panels everywhere, like antennas on rooftops.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Clean energy for everyone.
I like it.
Something to work towards.
And it sounds like solar isn't the only thing getting upgraded.
No way. There's so much happening.
Right.
Like how we connect renewables to the power grid is getting better.
Okay.
So the flow of energy is more reliable. And battery storage is improving fast, so we can save energy for later.
Right, when the sun's not out or the wind's not blowing.
Exactly. And then you've got the really mind-blowing stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like hydrogen fuel from methane pyrolysis and, of course, space-based solar power.
That one's still hard to wrap my head around.
I know, right? It's wild.
It feels like we're living in the future already.
It does.
But all this progress, it doesn't come cheap.
True.
One of the reports talked about the money needed, especially for developing countries.
Yeah, we need more public investment, big time.
Oh.
More grants, those concessional loans, maybe even a global wealth tax like we talked about.
Right.
It's being talked about more and more these days,
It is.
but it can't just be public money, though.
Right. What about private investment?
That's a big part of it, too.
Yeah.
Between 2013 and 2020, they made up about 75% of all renewable energy investment.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, but a lot of that went to develop economies, chasing those quick returns.
Right, the easy money.
Yeah, kind of like going for the low-hanging fruit,
I get it.
but sometimes you got to climb higher for the good stuff.
So how do we get investors to look beyond the easy wins?
Well, some countries are showing how it's done,
Oh, yeah?
like India, Brazil. They're setting big goals for renewables and making it easier for investors.
Okay,
They're showing that economic growth and sustainability can go together.
I like that. Proof that it can work.
Yeah, it's encouraging.
But let's talk about something we haven't really touched on yet.
What's that?
People.
Oh, yeah.
What about the human side of all this? What role do we play in this energy transition?
That's such a great point. It's easy to get lost in all the tech and numbers,
Right.
but this is about creating a better future for everyone. And that means jobs.
Jobs.
Yeah, renewables are creating a ton of jobs.
Really?
Yeah, in 2022, it was something like 12.7 million globally. That's way up from 7.3 million just 10 years earlier.
That's amazing. So this is about more than just the environment. It's an economic opportunity too.
Exactly. And as the sector grows, we're going to need all kinds of skilled workers.
Right.
That means investing in training, especially for women, young people, and minorities.
I love that this is creating so many opportunities. It feels like we're finally connecting all the dots. The environment, the economy, social justice, it's all linked.
It is.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but let's be real.
Okay.
There are some big hurdles we got to overcome.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges to getting to that 100% renewable future?
I think one of the biggest ones is infrastructure.
What do you mean?
We're not just talking about putting up solar panels and wind turbines.
Right.
We need a way to get all that energy from where it's made to where it's needed.
Oh, like transmission lines.
Exactly. And we need better storage systems to keep the lights on when the sun isn't shining or the wind's not blowing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And figuring out how to add all these new energy sources to the existing grid without messing things up.
So it's like building a whole new energy system from scratch.
Pretty much.
Ah.
And it's not easy.
And I bet the permitting process doesn't help.
You're telling me? Remember that article about offshore wind?
7 permits.
2 years to get approval, on average.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of red tape.
Yeah, it's no wonder things are moving so slowly.
Right. And then there's the question of materials.
Oh, right, to build all this new stuff.
Exactly. We got to make sure we have enough.
Are we going to run out?
Well, things like trade wars and protectionist policies can cause problems.
Makes sense.
They can disrupt supply chains and slow things down.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
We need to be smarter about where we get our materials from, make sure those supply chains are strong.
So we don't get stuck.
Right. We need to be prepared for anything.
Okay, so we've got the infrastructure, the permits, the materials.
Right.
But what about the elephant in the room?
What's that?
Renewables aren't always on.
Ah, yes, the intermittency problem.
Right, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow.
Exactly.
What happens when nature takes a break? How do we keep the lights on?
That's the big question, right? And that's what so many brilliant minds are working on.
Okay.
We got to think beyond just solar and wind. Look at things like geothermal, tidal, wave energy.
Right, mix it up.
Exactly. We need a variety of options.
Like a renewable energy buffet.
I like that.
We can choose what we need depending on the weather, the time of day, what the demand is.
Exactly. Flexibility is key.
It's about being adaptable.
Yeah. And it's a challenge, but the progress is amazing.
It is.
We're always coming up with new tech and getting better at what we do.
I'm glad to hear it.
It's an exciting field to be in, that's for sure.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
The history, the potential of renewables, the economics, the environment, jobs, infrastructure, all of it.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But what's the big picture here? What does a truly sustainable energy future look like?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, good.
We got to talk about governments and policies.
Right.
That's where all these ideas and challenges come together. It's where the rubber meets the road.
We've talked about policy a bit, haven't we?
We have.
It's obviously a big deal if we want to make this renewable energy thing happen.
Absolutely. Like we've been saying, the tech's getting there. It makes economic sense. But without the right policies, it's not going to change much in the real world.
So what needs to happen? How do we make a system that actually helps renewables? Because, fossil fuels, that's a powerful industry.
For sure.
They're not going to give up easily.
No. They've had a lot of sway for a long time. It's going to take some serious effort to shift things.
So how do we do that? Level the playing field, create a system that's actually good for clean energy.
One of the articles talked about a realignment, like a systemic one, moving away from everything that's pro-fossil fuels and building something that actually helps renewables grow.
Okay, that makes sense, but where do we even start? It sounds huge.
We need a plan, clear strategies, milestones, to really cut down on carbon.
Decarbonization, yeah.
Not just electricity, but transportation, how we make things, how efficient our buildings are.
So everything, a big picture approach.
Exactly. And then back it up with, like, real financial policies,
Right.
tax breaks for renewable projects,
Mm-hmm.
things that make fossil fuels more expensive, more research funding, to keep innovating.
So like tax rebates, grants, anything that makes it cheaper to use clean energy.
Exactly. But it's not just about money. We need regulations that are smarter,
Mm.
make it easier to get renewable projects approved. Remember all those permits?
Oh yeah, 7 permits, 2 years waiting for offshore wind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's got to change.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. It's not just about individual countries though, right? We all have to work together.
Absolutely. Your articles, they all emphasize that.
Yeah.
Global cooperation.
Yeah.
Countries have to work together to build the infrastructure for this new energy system.
Yeah.
Like sharing energy across borders, making sure the rules are the same everywhere.
So everyone's on the same page.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a lot to do, but it's the only way to make this global shift happen.
It is a lot, but it's also pretty exciting, isn't it? To think about everyone working together on this.
It is. Imagine a world where we're all working towards a cleaner future.
I like that. But what about the people listening? We've talked about governments and companies, but what can we do?
There's a lot you can do. Support businesses that are doing the right thing,
Well,
push for better policies in your community, try to use less energy at home. And I think the most important thing is stay informed.
yeah.
The more we understand all this, the better choices we can make. And the more we can, hold our leaders accountable.
Knowledge is power, right? That's how we make change.
Exactly. This whole deep dive, it's about giving you the knowledge you need. We talked about where we are now, the potential of renewables, what it means for the economy, the environment, what we can do, the policies that need to change. It's been a lot.
Yeah, it has. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot.
Me too.
So what now? What's the takeaway?
I think the big takeaway is this. The future of energy, it's not set in stone. It's being shaped right now by all of us. The choices we make.
Every day.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what role are you going to play? Are you just going to watch it happen, or are you going to be part of it? It's up to you.
That's a great question to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We hope it's been helpful, maybe sparked some ideas, got you thinking.
Yeah, we hope you learned something and that it gave you a sense of, like, possibility, that things can change.
Absolutely. Keep asking those big questions. Keep pushing for a better future.
And keep exploring. Until next time.